Remember The Darkness? Yeah, that band that helped us believe in a thing called love and basically sternly told us to keep our hands off of their woman. Motherfucker. Well, it's been a long time, but they're back with a new record entitled CAKES, which was just released yesterday, which is August the 21st of 2012. And a lot of questions have to be answered because it has been a long time since the last Darkness record. For those of you who don't know, Permission to Land was not the last record. There was another one in between there. Yeah, if you missed it, a lot of people did too, so don't worry about it. However, rehab stint done. Now the questions need to be answered. Number one, here in 2012, is glam style metal still relevant? Number two, if it isn't, then how can you make it relevant? And number three, can you transform Radiohead into a new wave of British heavy metal band that has arena rock tendencies? The answer to question number one is not really, but it does have a market. It's a very small niche market. We have Steel Panther, of course, here in the metal realm, which is kind of taking the idea to an extreme. And I've even heard some terrible, terrible sightings from the Black Veil Brides camp, claiming that that's based around glam. Ugh, I don't even want to think about that. Maybe we'll talk about that band later. And to answer the question that's the second one, well, you drape the glam metal with some 70s classic rock charm and add in some 60s rock and roll melodies, and you're able to make it sound a little bit fresh, though not very much, considering those primary influences were already semi-instated in glam, along with speed metal. And finally, yeah, you can turn Radiohead into a new wave of British heavy metal / arena rock band. They did it. Yeah, Street Spirit Fade Out. It's on this record. It's a cover, and wow. They made it aggressive. They made it crazy. And of course, the falsetto works beautifully in contrast to Thom Yorke's voice, which also boasts some similar characteristics, but of course the Darkness are able to take it that much higher, which just leaves you that much more in awe if you're not used to this by now. For those of you who are used to this by now, then you know that this is absolutely nothing new, and that this album is going to boast this throughout the entire affair, which it does. In fact, upon listening to previous works, such as Permission to Land, I actually think this album uses it a little bit more, and it's part of his natural range, so you can almost understand why that's the case. However, you know, some people may find that to be a little over-excessive. I don't. I think that this is kind of, you know, that's his thing. It's the thing that makes him unique, so you might as well use the thing that makes you unique. If you don't do that, then, well, you're just trying to be like everybody else. That's kind of boring. This band's definitely not boring, I'll tell you that. I mean, you're basically combining 3 different decades, the 60s, the 70s, and 80s. And 4 decades if you even want to go deeper into the melodies, because there are some tracks on this album that almost feel like that there's a little bit of the 90s draped in them. And it's not so much in the way that it's not going to sound like Deep Blue something or, you know, something like that. It's just in the way in which the construction is. The construction definitely has that 90s alternative feel to it in the background, especially with some of the guitar work. This only takes place in 1 or 2 tracks, and maybe I'm really stretching it right there, but if I am, and if you guys can kind of hear that tone, then let me know, because it's just something that was kind of bugging me. Not that it's really a bad thing, but you know what I mean. This album has the marks of a consistent record. However, it does suffer from a couple of minor character flaws. The problem with a style of metal such as this, or rock such as this, is that since it is so dated and since there is such a small niche market to it, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to listen to this and find it absolutely ridiculous. Now, it isn't ridiculous, it's just something completely different. However, the main flaw that is exposed here is that there seems to be a little bit of a right of the of the cliche, a little bit of a right of the traditional here. And tradition isn't a bad thing, but cliche sometimes can get you into a lot of trouble. Now, a lot of you might probably ask me, what makes this album different than the 5 things that I hate about modern day pop and rap, considering they're talking about, you know, boy loves girl, boy is being taken advantage of by girl, or wants girl back, blah, blah, blah. Well, plain and simply, they're not bragging about it. They're basically pining. They're doing the age-old tactic that I also mentioned in that video, so watch a little bit more closely. But this is also a staple of that particular genre. It's a staple of glam. Glam is all about partying and being unlucky in love. It's one of those things that's almost like a full circle effect. Now, different people that I hear in this is I hear a little bit of Brian Johnson from AC/DC early on in this album, which is kind of weird to even think about, considering he does not have a redonkulously high falsetto. I hear a little bit of Queen. I hear a little bit of Guns N' Roses. You know, basically consider the period. And the album is actually going to be very receptive to all of those. And whenever you think about it, this is a band that's basically just having fun after being on hiatus for about 7 years. So it's not going to be well polished, but overall, it's not a bad disc. This is one of those discs that you pop in whenever you're having a party, or you pop in whenever you're going on a road trip or doing something and you just want to smile a little bit, or just want to hear something that kind of just puts a grin on your face. The Darkness is good for this, mainly because they're not overbearing. They're not an overbearing band, at least not with their music. Their music definitely reminds you of a more popular time for rock and metal. The vocals can sometimes be tremendously overbearing, but once you get used to it, you almost expect it. It's something that becomes part of the palette, so it isn't something that overbears you as much as it would perhaps on the first couple of tracks. I think this album's alright. I mean, it's not going to blow any ears off, it's not going to set the world on fire, but I think it's good for a solid 7. I enjoyed the experience, and, it's one of those things where you listen to a band, 10 years ago, or however many years ago it was, and you kind of find something in them. And then they release an album later on, and it's been a long time, they've been on hiatus for 5 to 7 years or something like that, and I don't know, they kind of recaptured it. It's not like they necessarily trailed off. They picked up right where they left off, and they made a pretty decent record, so I'm going to give them credit for that. Aside from that, well, pick it up. It's kind of a cool disc. I'll talk to you guys later.